And of course, I also want to say, Gong Fuk Hong Kong, Si Dai Gak Ming. It's a privilege to be here today on behalf of Hong Kong Watch. But I would rather that not have to be here today. And the only reason we are here is because there are 12 very brave young Hong Kongers who are in an extremely dangerous situation. They are where they should not be. They are in a prison in China. And we are here to cry out to the world to say, free the 12 Hong Kongers, return them to Hong Kong. Before that, if that cannot happen immediately, at least allow them to have lawyers of their choice, to have medical access if they need it, to have contact with their families. But free them and return them to Hong Kong, where they should be. About 2 weeks ago, the Hong Kong activist Joey Siu and I were talking about what we could do to help our 12 Hong Kong brothers and sisters. And we decided to take a very simple action, and that was to start a social media snowball. And so Joey and I both tweeted an image with the hashtag Save 12 HK youths, and the idea was to post it on social media, to tag 3 friends, and to create a snowball. And we were joined in that first round by Luke and by Nathan, who you'll hear from shortly, and by Majid Nawaz. And that snowball became an avalanche. And around the world now, thousands of people are joining that campaign. From Greta Thunberg to the former Miss World Canada Anastasia Lim, from the former leader of the Conservative Party Ian Duncan Smith to the former US presidential candidate Mitt Romney. Politicians across parties and across nations, the Liberal Democrat Alistair Carmichael, the Labour MP Sarah Champion, politicians and MPs across Europe, Australia, Canada and beyond. And I would urge you, if you haven't already joined that campaign, to help that avalanche continue, so that the spotlight, so that the snowball becomes a spotlight, and the light continues to shine on the 12, and that light mobilizes politicians and governments, because the social media campaign isn't an end in itself. What we need to turn that campaign into is pressure on governments around the world, to put pressure on China to free the 12. Already 2 days ago, 65 members of parliament in this country have written to the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab and have signed a global letter to Carrie Lam. MPs in Canada have done the same, and we hope parliamentarians around the world will join this global effort to put pressure on the Chinese government to free the 12. So please join that campaign on social media if you haven't. You can do it by disguising your identity if you wish to, but just take a photo with that hashtag, tag 3 friends, and keep up that momentum. I want to say just one last thing, and that is that our objective shouldn't just be to free the 12, although it should be that. But our objective should be to work for the day when, in Hong Kong, what those 12 young people did, and particularly what Andy Lee did, should be lauded and applauded and celebrated and honoured, not criminalised. They should be free to do the simple thing that they did, which was to work for the freedoms that Hong Kong was promised. And if we want to honour Andy Lee and the 12, we should work not only for their freedom, but continue to work for the freedom of all Hong Kongers. Because this isn't just about the 12, although it is rightly, of course, about the 12. It isn't even just about Hong Kong. It's about freedom itself. And if the 12 are allowed to be forgotten and to languish in jail in China, then no Hong Konger is safe, but even more so, none of us is safe. Because when Hong Kong's freedoms are lost, the Chinese Communist Party isn't going to stop there. They will threaten Taiwan, they will threaten others, and ultimately they will threaten our own freedoms here today. So it's not only morally right though it is. It's not only an act of compassion, but it's also an act of self-interest to speak up for the 12. We are the 12. The 12 are not just the 12 individuals in jail in China. We are all with the 12. And so I say again as I conclude, and my Cantonese is very, very limited, and I've been practicing it, but I still need to glance at it just to remind myself. I say again, Mo Mong Yi Si, Sik Fong Suk Yi, Gong Fuk Hong Gong, Si Doi Gak Ming, Ga Yao.
咁啊，頭先何律師用廣東話講出就釋放12義士啦。
Thank you, Ben. So our second speaker, Luke, is the director of the Rise Foundation and a fellow at Hong Kong Watch. He's also the founder of the Coalition for Genocide Response and a member of the Conservative Party Human Rights Commission. He has been active in campaigning for Hong Kong and visited Hong Kong last November to monitor the district council elections. As a member of the International Independent Election Observation Mission. So please give a warm welcome to Luke. Thank you.
咁啊，跟住落嚟發言嘅呢就係中文譯名係佩倫德保守黨人權委員會委員。
I've woken up in the morning every day with the same image in my head. It's a skinny Hong Konger, about the same height as me, with glasses, a guy who's quite shy but who has a steely look in his eye, a guy who I know pretty well, and a guy who I love. This is what comes to mind when I think of him. This is what's in my mind's eye. I think of his room. I think of a fan on full blast. I think of posters on the wall and flags on the wall that are fluttering in the breeze. I think of a gaming chair engulfing him like some kind of throne. I think of a phone going off all hours of the day and all hours of the night, and him never sleeping because he always responded to it. I'm talking about Andy Lee. Andy Lee, a man who was completely committed to the cause of freedom and democracy in Hong Kong. But it didn't start out that way. Andy Lee was like so many of you. Andy Lee was a guy who had his entire life before him, a guy whose career was very promising. He was a guy who was an expert computer technician. And like many in his generation as well, he was a guy who was having to deal with the bitter fruits of colonialism and all of their consequences handed to his generation by us. It didn't start out that way with Andy Lee. He wasn't a born campaigner. He didn't choose it. It chose him. And let me be clear. Andy Lee was a quiet hero. He never chose the limelight. He never pushed himself forward. He was willing to allow his face and his name to be associated with this campaign because nobody else wanted to do it. He never sought interviews. He never promoted himself. He did it as a sacrifice. That's the man that I know, and many of you might know, in Andy Lee. So where is Andy Lee now? Because this is sounding like a eulogy. Andy Lee is not dead, as far as we know. Andy Lee is in prison in Shenzhen, and he is not alone. He's with 11 others. 11 other freedom fighters from Hong Kong. The Hong Kong 12. Collateral in a clash of value systems. Why am I saying that? Because while Beijing may break its promises to Hong Kong wantonly, may lie, steal, spy and cheat, they are not the only people who made promises to Hong Kong. Who else made promises to the people of Hong Kong? The UK! And what were those promises? Those promises were guaranteed by treaty that is supposed to be safeguarded and implemented and followed up by the United Nations. What were those promises? To uphold the autonomy of Hong Kong, to defend the way of life of the people of Hong Kong, to defend the human rights of the people of Hong Kong. So where are those promises today? Let's just think about the 12. Where are those promises today? What has the UK done to help the Hong Kong 12? Nothing. What use are those promises if the UK will not try to defend the human rights of the Hong Kong 12? What use are those promises? What use are they if kids can be extradited to mainland China, where they find themselves in prison with no recourse to their own legal practitioners, with no contact to their families, with no medical attention, with no hope of due process? What kind of promise is that? So I came here today to say one thing. These promises, from the UK's point of view, are being defaulted upon. We promised to the people of Hong Kong to defend your way of life and your human rights. If we cannot protect the Hong Kong 12, we are not living up to our treaty obligations. So what I want to say to you all is this. You have built the most creative, ingenious, efficient movement for democracy this century has seen, and possibly longer than that. It is time for this movement to turn its attention to the promises that it was made by the international community and the United Kingdom. If your authoritarian rulers back home are going to stonewall your requests, ignore your demands, lie and cheat, you must remember that there are other nations who made promises to you too. The UK made promises to you, and it must honour them. We're at a critical stage in this movement. As your city is squeezed, your spirit will feel like it wants to falter, and the forces of division will come amongst you. You must now resist them, rise above them, and turn the wisdom and beauty of this movement towards those who made you promises and must honour them. Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson, free the Hong Kong 12. Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson, free the Hong Kong 12, free Andy Lee. Fight for freedom! Fight for freedom!
頭先佢都係呼籲啦，英國係都要聲援幫助呢12港人。
Thanks, Luke, for the touching speech. So our first speaker today, Nathan Law, this will be his first public appearance since his exile. He is a Hong Kong activist, founder and former chairman of Demosisto, a Hong Kong pro-democracy political group, which is currently disbanded. Nathan was one of the student leaders in the umbrella movement in 2014.
嚟緊呢就係羅冠聰會發言嘅，咁呢個今日都係佢嚟咗倫敦大約3個幾4個月之後第一次嘅公開 場合第一次出現喺公開場合同埋發言。
National security law. Nathan has continued to campaign for Hong Kong, calling for action against the national security law and the Chinese government's tightening grip of Hong Kong. Please give a warm welcome to Nathan. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Nathan. It's really nice to see you all here. So I'll address my speech in Cantonese first because it's my words to my people, and I will continue it in an English version. 咁多位在場嘅香港人，大家好，我係羅冠聰。我4個月之前係唔會想像到我會喺倫敦見到大家。香港局勢變得好快，但我相信無論香港人身處喺任何一個地方，我哋都可以憑藉住我哋嘅意志同埋堅持，係繼續為香港人、為香港嘅民主運動繼續奮鬥落去。喺4年前，當我啱啱當選立法會議員嘅時候，好多人都好興奮、好開心、好戥啊開心。但係喺第二日，我就喺 Facebook 或者係提醒自己，而家先至係困難嘅開始。好多人都覺得選立法會的確好困難，但係對我嚟講，做一個稱職嘅立法會議員係更加困難。點樣取信於民？點樣令到大家都信任你，都覺得你係能夠代表到佢哋？去到3個月之前，當我真係可以好安全咁樣通過咗香港嘅機場，登上咗係飛往倫敦嘅飛機，我同樣係提醒住自己，離開唔係結束，離開係新嘅開始。我即將要喺一個新嘅地方開始一場新嘅戰鬥。我諗我同好多朋友一樣，我哋離開係有好多唔同原因嘅。可能在座有一啲係喺過去好長時間之前，幾十年之前已經移民咗嚟英國，或者有啲係因為工作原因，近年係嚟到英國發展，亦都見到有手足就係因為政治壓迫嘅原因，喺好近期先至係離開香港嚟到一個新嘅地方生活。大家有唔同嘅原因離開，但係大家今日嚟到呢一個地方，我相信都係得一個原因，就因為大家都覺得我哋為香港嘅民主運動仲有一份責任，仲有一份義務，因為大家都覺得我哋係香港人。喺過去嘅好長時間，可能你忙於工作，可能你忙於拓展你嘅事業、照顧家庭，但每當香港兩隻字喺新聞出現，喺報紙嘅頭版出現，我諗大家嘅心情都會隨住呢個城市嘅變化、呢個城市嘅變遷而起伏。而當去到14年嘅雨傘、16年嘅魚蛋，去到19年嘅反送中，我哋先至知道原來香港呢兩個字仲喺我哋心目中係埋藏住一個咁重要嘅位置。我哋依然好關注呢一個城市，我哋依然好關注呢個城市裏面每一個人過得點，好關注香港人到底面對啲咩困難，面對啲咩挑戰。所以對我嚟講呢，離開咗香港，我係要行一條似乎冇乜嘢香港過去嘅人行過嘅路。當然我哋會有好多朋友流亡，我哋又會好多朋友移民，但事實上咁樣嘅生活對我嚟講，我真係唔係好清楚我可以喺邊一個人、邊一個朋友身上可以揾到一啲可以參考嘅地方。行嘅每一步都似乎係好驚險，都似乎係充滿住未知。所以好多朋友話：啊，點解你過去幾個月都好似好低調咁呢？因為事實上今次的確係我第一次喺英國出席一個公開嘅場合，對住咁多位朋友，好多熟悉嘅面孔，亦都有好多未見過嘅朋友係去講呢一句説話，就因為我喺離開香港嘅時候已經係下定咗決心，我會喺未來一段好長嘅時間係同共產黨對抗，係投入咗一段好長嘅抗爭。所以喺呢個情況之下，呢一個唔係一個安全舒適嘅路，唔係一個大家都 都可以有一個好好嘅藍本，有一個好好嘅生涯規劃，甚至會知道未來1年之後、未來1個月之後，你會喺邊嘅一個位置。亦都唔知道你自己一個人安危會唔會時刻受到威脅，唔知道喺一個好無緣無故嘅下午喺你身邊出現嘅人，佢到底係帶住咩企圖去接近你？所以對我嚟講，呢個係一個我要重新適應嘅生活。但係好多嘅手足都係一樣嘅，我哋都係帶住不安懷疑，但係同時有一份為咗香港貢獻嘅心嚟到新嘅地方去適應新嘅生活，並且開展一場新嘅戰鬥。而呢一個戰鬥，我相信在場所有人都係可以參與嘅。香港人，我哋行埋一齊，我哋流散到各地，但係同時我哋都可以形成新嘅社群。我哋嘅社群有我哋分享嘅語言，有我哋共同認識嘅文化，有我哋互相幫助、互相了解。但係同時我哋都要鞏固自己嘅資本，拓展自己嘅影響力，令到無論我哋喺香港或者係去到世界任何一個地方，喺倫敦、喺曼市、喺石飛，我哋都能夠係擁有我哋自己嘅聲音，我哋都能夠係互相彼此支持，我哋都能夠喺最艱難嘅時候得到啲鼓勵。所以呢一個社群大家都有份嘅，而呢一個社群就係我哋喺國際上面抗爭，喺英國上面抗爭，去要求共產黨係要對佢自己所作所為付上相應嘅代價，呢個最重要嘅根源嚟嘅。但係我哋唔係要一個圍威喂嘅社群，我哋淨係同自己人去連結係唔夠㗎，我哋都要同當地嘅組織、當地嘅政治去溝通交流，確保我哋嘅聲音係能夠隨住人與人之間嘅關係，隨住我哋見得越嚟越多人係得到鞏固。我哋每個人自己都唔可以怠慢，我哋要增長，我哋要學習，我哋要鞏固自己嘅影響力，鞏固自己嘅事業。因為有陣時喺現實嚟講，理念唔一定係可以帶嚟改變嘅，但係唯有一個可以令到大家都有共鳴，係有影響力嘅理念，先至可以帶嚟改變。呢個就係點解我哋每一個都仲喺海外嘅人，我哋都要係為住呢個目標進發，我哋都要係令到自己變成一個更加好嘅人，更加有影響力嘅人，從而係幫助到成場運動，去鞏固到我哋嘅社群，令到香港人嘅聲音喺世界每一個角落，除咗喺報紙、新聞、雜誌上面出現，亦都會喺每一個角落落地生根。呢個就係我哋所有喺香港以外嘅人嘅責任。所以我成日都講，無論我去到邊，或者我遇到咩狀態，企得喺呢個地方，我係冇資格絕望，我都冇資格放棄嘅。因為我哋見到香港裏面嘅人，只要一日我哋得唔到民主自治，只要一日仲有一個手足係因為佢嘅政治而被壓迫，只要呢12位我哋香港嘅手足仲係會面對一啲咁無恥無稽，被拐帶返大陸，得唔到法律代表，冇藥物嘅狀況，我哋仲有一啲空間去發聲。我哋唔係直接面對緊喺香港困難嘅朋友，我哋就冇資格怠慢，我哋一定係要努力，用我哋自己嘅方式去鞏固我哋嘅自己社群，去發揮我哋嘅影響力。所以到今日，我都好希望係同大家講一聲，都感謝各位喺今日依然都係出嚟去支持呢12位手足。過去有好多朋友做咗好多唔同嘅活動、唔同嘅行動，都係希望帶出一個訊息，我哋唔會係放棄任何一個香港人。去到今日呢一句説話依然都係適用，所以希望各位未來要光復香港嘅路係會好長嘅，甚至係好多嘅挫折、好多嘅困苦。但係只要我哋團結喺呢條路上，大家嘅身影都會喺成功嗰一日係出現喺呢一條路上面。所以希望大家我哋一齊努力，喺海外我哋仲有更加大嘅責任，有更加大嘅能力 去做更加多嘅嘢。光復香港！光復香港！光復香港！香港獨立！唯一出路！唯一出路！唯一出路！ So for all the English-speaking fellows here, once again, thank you very much for coming. And for me, it's an overwhelming experience to flee from Hong Kong to London. And I just realized that from my past experience in interacting with all the British citizens, that I realized that actually a lot of you have different kinds of connection with Hong Kong, more than I expected. Some of you may have worked in Hong Kong, may have lived there, or even you are having some relatives still living in Hong Kong. And this kind of connection binds us together. And as an activist and as a person who are in exile and commit myself into international advocacy runs, I would like to express my gratitude towards everyone who has helped Hong Kong people to advance our causes. We will never take it for granted. We understand that everyone has their priority, but we are glad that you put Hong Kong as your priority, even though you're not from here, even though you don't have to do so, but you're still standing with us and advancing our causes. So I'd like to thank you all, especially those who have helped our campaign, Ben, Luke, on behalf of Hong Kong people, of how much you have helped us to broadcast our voice and to advance our causes abroad, and to make an impact to really move this giant authoritarian regime. We understand that the fight for Hong Kong is crucial. If we continue to allow China, the Communist Party, to continue their authoritarian expansion in Hong Kong and across border, we understand that every single one of us who treasure democratic values are the victims. This is Hong Kong people's battle, but this is also everyone's battle, and a battle for all. And I think from this stage, being united, being in solidarity, is the only way to protect our democracy, our democratic system, from the deterioration from these authoritarian expansionist and these draconian regimes. So it's important that we stick together. And from here, I would like to conclude my speech from a quote of respected Dr. King. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. It's an important time that we vow our support towards the Hong Kong people and the 12 who are detained in mainland China. Our demands are simple and humble: democracy and autonomy, and we will not give up. We will do whatever we could do, whenever we are, with whatever cost. So, thank you for all for standing shoulder to Hong Kong people, and I bless you all good health in the crisis, in the crisis of such a pandemic situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan, for the touching speech. And now back to our final speaker for the day, Mr. Chris Whitehouse. So I'll pass the mic to him. Please give a warm welcome to him. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, despite the weather, it is a pleasure and a privilege to be with you today for what is an important rally for basic, fundamental human rights of the 12 Hong Kong youths detained in China. It's fundamental to the principles of international human rights law that individuals facing allegations and accusations of criminal activity should be clearly told what those charges are. They should know the process through which they're going to be tried. Their basic welfare needs must be met. They must have access to their families, and they must be able to appoint lawyers of their choice. As we stand here today, and as the 12 cringe no doubt in the prisons in which they're being held, all those principles we have the right to believe, reason to believe, are being denied. They're not principles that the rest of the world has forced upon China. They're principles that China has accepted itself voluntarily by committing to international treaties in which it is now clearly in breach. The organisation that I'm representing today is called the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Hong Kong. It's a caucus. It's a group of MPs who come together from both houses of Parliament and from all political parties because they have one thing in common. They want to protect freedom in Hong Kong. They work together across party lines. This morning, there's a major article in the Independent newspaper by two of its officers. Embedded in the middle of that article is a video of my hero, my personal hero, who I've brought along today because I know that if she was in the United Kingdom, she would be here. For those who can see it, that's Grandma Wong. Holding up her own hashtag, Save 12 HKUs. Let me tell you something. If I was the Chinese Communist Party, I would be bloody scared of Grandma Wong, because what she has done is to demonstrate real commitment, real courage. They took that older lady away for 14 months. They kept her in a tiny cell with 25 other prisoners. She was abused, intimidated, probably beaten, forced to make false confessions, and yet the minute she got back to Hong Kong, she was prepared to speak out and risk it all happening again. That's true courage. Standing on a stepladder with a mask on my face in the drizzle isn't courage. That's true courage. And today I ask you to join me in a salute to Grandma Wong. Grandma Wong! Grandma Wong! Grandma Wong!
Thank you, Chris. So, we are here today to call for the immediate release of the 12 Hong Kong youth back to Hong Kong, the granting and protection of the fundamental right of political prisoners, including the right to freely choose their legal representative, the right to proper medical treatment, and the right to be in contact with the outside world. We urge governments around the world to express their concern for the 12 Hong Kong youth. The people of Hong Kong has fought and resisted tirelessly for precisely the hope that such repression does not occur to our people, and that we may live without fearing for political oppressions and white terror. Notwithstanding the increased draconian and repressive measures by the government of Hong Kong and China, Hong Kongers we continue our struggle for democracy and liberty until the day when Hong Kong is truly free. May our brother and sister come home soon. Fight for freedom! Stand with Hong Kong! Fight for freedom! Stand with Hong Kong! Fight for freedom! Stand with Hong Kong! Save 12 Hong Kong youth! 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 Thank you. So this is almost the end of the rallies, but we still have the Vote for Hong Kong campaign. So our helpers are handing out origami papers. So please, if you have time, stay behind and fold origami. And also a beautiful backdrop for our campaign today. Sorry. 提醒下大家，我哋嘅 helpers 都會派紙你麻煩大家可以接個紙船咁我哋會影翻啲相到俾香港嘅唔該 ，thank you。
今日嘅集會咧就發言部分就完成咗啦，而家佢哋就主辦單位有派到啲紙咧，咁希望可以接紙船去聲援翻。現場呢，就係大家都會現 現場舉起集會人士舉嘅旗幟咧，有光復香港時代革命嘅旗啦，都有聲援12人嘅口號啊，同埋香港獨立嘅旗幟，有英國嘅旗幟。
如果大家接咗船嘅咧，可以拎啲船嚟台前，我哋有個兜可以收集咗佢咯。If you have thrown any to your boat, you can come in front and we have a boat to collect it.
或絕望，擔心的或對抗，那時那人那物那種釋放，向前行不動。
We have a key rings that someone have lost maybe.
自由達到那一方，花開鋪滿這地，為你護航。鐵欄前守護着，淚流亦要去抵擋，堅守心裏信念已不枉。
佢哋主辦單位就收集咗一啲紙船啊，就係集會人士接嘅，就係去聲援12人嘅。
我哋租咗一架投影車，我哋租咗一架投影車，而家已經泊咗喺公園嘅嗰邊，大家可以去嗰邊睇我哋嘅投影車所播嘅片段。We have went a digital van is showing some animation about the Save the 12 youth in Hong Kong is at the end of the corner of this park. If you're interested, you can go there and have a look.
都講翻，其實今日咧就喺英國倫敦嘅下晝啦，喺呢個 Tower Bridge 倫敦橋塔附近，我哋有一個聲援12人嘅集會嘅。咁啊頭先就集會上面就有包括流亡咗過嚟嘅羅冠聰發言啦，咁佢希望都係喺海外嘅港人咧都可以運用自己嘅影響力。去令到呢個即係支援翻香港嘅，咁而家咧就差唔多㗎啦，咁個集會最後就主辦單位就收集咗一啲集會人士接嘅紙船，就聲援翻12人嘅，係啦，咁可能今日嘅集會就去到呢度差唔多啦，唔該晒大家。